This is my all-city Mr. Pink long-term test bike. I've built it up as my dream winter bike. I've been riding it for a few weeks now and I love it. For those of you that have seen our videos before, you know that I've been riding a pretty broad spectrum of bikes this year. So from a super light hill climb fixie to a fast road race bike with the Rose X Lite, I've kind of had a chance to try it all, but really in my heart of hearts, I've always enjoyed riding heavy steel bikes with lots of accessories. So getting to build this has been an absolute treat. I've built the bike up to my specs, so Ison have supplied the frame set, and this is the all-city Mr. Pink Classic. The frame set used to be available only in this guise, but for the last 3-4 years, they offered the bike with a carbon fork. However, after consumer demand, they reintroduced the steel fork, and that's what really got me interested in this bike. Now, there's nothing wrong with carbon forks. I've ridden a lot of great steel bikes with carbon forks, the Fairlight Strail being a really good example. But for me, there's just something about the quality, the ride quality of a steel fork, which I find really attractive. And it's that kind of damped, very comfortable feeling that I was after, and I was curious to see if this would deliver it. Now, I've ridden something pretty similar to this. That was the Velo Orange Pass Hunter. I had that for a lot of last year, and we do have a video on that with a link in the description. But this bike, you'll notice, controversially, in 2018, has rim brakes. Now with the Pass Hunter, obviously with disc brakes, presents a lot of advantages, but one of my complaints with that bike is that owing to the fact you have to overbuild steel forks for discs, you tend to get a slightly deadened ride. And I was curious to see that with this rim brake bike, with its slightly lighter fork, so it isn't the lightest, I was curious to see if it would still be more comfortable basically. So that's why I chose to go with rim brakes, and also to provoke the hatred of people in comments. So let me know how dumb I am for choosing rim brakes. But one of the things I was really keen to try out was Shimano's new R7000 105 group set. Now the eagle-eyed will notice I haven't used every component in the group set, but I've chosen some key things which I think will give me a good understanding for how the group set performs. And that is the rear derailleur, the cassette, and the shifters. That's pretty much what's going to define the group set overall for me, and by choosing to go for a different crankset, which I'll cover in a moment, allowed me to open up some interesting options in terms of gearing, which isn't possible with a standard 105 group set. Thus far, I have to say I'm very impressed. I spent a lot of time in Ultegra R8000, and perhaps a little bit of feel difference, but really the difference between the group sets is pretty minimal, so keep your eyes peeled for a full review on that in the new year. In terms of gearing, I wanted to do something a bit interesting with this bike, and for those of you that remember, these cranks are actually a passover from the Pass Hunter, and I'm using a set of White Industries VBC R30 road cranks. Very heavy, simple, nice skinny alloy arms which really suit the look of the bike. The really interesting thing with these cranks is that outer chainring. So the outer chainring actually is a direct mount option, and that mounts to the cranks, but you'll notice here on the chainring itself, those sections are actually slotted. And that allows you to mount pretty much any inner chainring you want. So you can go for wildly different options from your full-size chain set right down to, I think the lowest they do is something like a 25 tooth inner ring, which is minuscule. And that's what really attracted me to it. So I've got a 44 tooth outer currently with a 32 tooth inner, but with the 44 tooth outer paired with the 1128 cassette, I pretty much ride the bike like a one-by setup, and I spend most of my time in the middle of the cassette. So it's nice and quiet, it runs really smoothly, and if I want to get up a really steep climb, I can drop down into that really small inner ring. Like I said, that's a 32 currently, but I do have the option to go even lower, and in the new year I might drop down to a 28 or even a 26, depending on the rides I have planned. But thus far, I'm really happy with that setup, and it's something I can totally see working for this sort of bike where out and out speed isn't your ultimate priority. Now obviously, building a winter bike, in my eyes, is not complete without a set of mudguards, and once again I've opted for Velo Orange's hammered alloy mudguards. I think, pound for pound, these are some of the best mudguards you can get on the market. They cost barely more than a set of regular SKS chromoplastic guards, but they last so much longer, and I found that if set up well, they are absolutely silent. I've gone for the 45mm wide mudguards, and they fit just under the crown, but it means I've got tons of space around those 28mm tyres for any stones or leaves which get dragged around. And I personally think the black hammered finish is absolutely perfect. Now, wrapping around those mudguards, we have a set again from Velo Orange of its Grand Cru long reach brakes. Now, because I am running mudguards, a set of standard Shimano calipers wouldn't be quite reachy enough to work, so I've gone for these brakes. My initial impressions of these brakes are very good. They're machined out of what looks like a single billet of aluminium, and they're incredibly stiff. So they feel really, really good at the lever, and they have massive clearances. And I think without mudguards, you can get like 35mm tyres under it. Now, here in Bristol, we're at the time of year where 3:30, 4 o'clock, it's already getting dark. So another thing I think is key for a winter road bike is dynamo lighting. There's nothing wrong with battery lights if you remember to charge them. And if you know anything about me, that's something that's very unlikely to happen. So having a set of dynamo lights constantly on tap is a great option. Now for the wheels, I've got a set of Halo's new dynamo wheels. These are built with a SP hub up front and Halo's own hub on the back, and those are laced to a set of Halo Evora rims. Now what's interesting about these wheels is that they are a stock build. There's an increasing number of stock dynamo wheel sets on the market, and it's really interesting to see Halo coming in because these are really cheap for dynamo wheels. As they're so cheap, they bring the point of entry for dynamo lighting just that little bit lower, and the kind of difference between a decent battery light setup and a decent dynamo light setup is closing all the time. So it's actually quite a compelling option if you're building a bike from the ground up. For the light itself, I've got an Exposure Revo light, and it's excellent. It's got a really good broad beam pattern, and for kind of off-road gravel riding, it's perfect. There are other light options on the market which have more shaped beams, and I'm personally just quite curious to try those out compared to the more broad spread of these. So if you have any suggestions for dynamo lights that you like, by all means, please leave those in the comments and I'll check those out. One thing I should mention is that SP hub is actually only a 1.5 watt model, which means that for the first, I'd say, minute and a half of riding, the light actually only lights up 2 of its LEDs, as this is a 3 watt light. But after you've been riding for a little bit, it charges up those capacitors inside and you get the full power of all 4 LEDs. There are more powerful hubs out there, but this was light enough that I favoured that over having out and out power. And finishing things off, we have some really solid, dependable finishing kit from Thompson. I love Thompson kit. You can't draw any complaints with it. It's really simple, solid stuff. I'm really happy with it. One thing of note though is I've actually gone for the X4 stem rather than the X2. The X2 actually is more suited for road riding, but having that 4-bolt faceplate opens up some quite interesting options for mounting lights and other accessories, so I favoured that over the lighter X2. And then for the saddle, this is a new one on me. I know it makes me sound very spoiled, but we actually had this Cambium C15 lying around the office, and I was just quite keen to try it, and I also think it suits the look of the bike. And thus far, I'm really impressed by it. I normally favour saddles with a cutout, but the shape feels really good, and after a few long rides, yeah, impressions are pretty good. So in terms of riding, I've had a chance to do some longer days out on this, and this is exactly what I've built the bike for. I mean, if you look at the fit, it's not the most aggressive in the world, it's pretty comfy, good squishy bar tape, and it feels amazing for long days. The big 28mm tyres definitely help, but the overall ride quality of the bike is very damped and lovely. It has that kind of classic, sproingy steel loveliness to it, and I'm really looking forward to doing some long days in the new year. I've also done plenty of short rides after work stuff, and I have to say it's delightful riding with my beautiful boys as part of BR Diaries and our morning rides. As the only one with mudguards, it means I don't get covered in muck while the rest of them come back smelling terrible. There's tons of other little details I really want to talk about, but this is going to be a really boring video if I keep going along with it. So if you want to read about everything I've done with this bike and all the silly little things which excite me about it, head over to BikeRadar.com and check out my full build profile of this bike, because it is one I'm really pleased with and one I'm really keen to talk about for days on end. So this is my All City Mr. Pink. As you can tell, I bloody love it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where it takes me in 2019. What do you think of the bike? What would you change about the build? Have I got it totally wrong with rim brakes? Are they the future? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe.